Anunnaki gods' true form is not human. The Anunnaki gods never actually had human form. But, as legend has it, those who fell from the heavens were transformed into spirits at the end of their days, trapped in this earthly realm. And there was one among them who possessed human form, as he had no name nor form of his own. In ancient Babylonian mythology, it is only the demons and inferior spirits, or mythical beings like Enki-bani, the friend of Gilgamesh, who are portrayed as animals, or as composite figures, partly human and partly beast. Enki alone, in his character the god of life, is given the fish's skin. And even then, the skin is but thrown over his back, like a priestly cloak. The composite monsters, whose forms Bêrôssos saw painted on the walls of the temple of Bêlos, were the brood of chaos, not belonging to the present order of the world. Well, not under those names or forms. Their mark is 7, which is invariable. The legend of the creation, preserved by the priests of Kotha, declares that the creatures, half men, half birds, which were depicted in sacred art, were suckled by Tiamat, the dragon-like personification of anarchy and chaos. This is labeled Tiamat, but this is actually the fallen god Zu, the Anzu bird. And Marduk only appears to retrieve the tablets of destiny, which I will explore and explain at a later date. The disappearance of these gods marked the victory of light over darkness, of the gods of heaven over the titanic monsters of the extinct age. The deities of Babylonia were emphatically human, human in character and in form. They stood in marked contrast to the animal-headed gods in Egypt, and harmonized with the Semitic belief that they made the deity the father of the human race, who had created man in his own image. Yet this statement is plural. Come, let us make them in our image. Food for thought. Chaldean art had already followed the same line of thought, and had depicted its divinities in the likeness of men. But in pre-Semitic days, this was a tendency only. It was not until the Akkadian came in contact with the Semite that he felt the full force of the Semite conception, and allowed his ancient deities of light and life to take permanently upon them the human shape. For there are many indications that it had not always been so. The very fact that the divine beings, who in the Semitic era were relegated to the realms of chaos, or the inferior world of the subordinate spirits, they were, in the beginning, represented as partly bestial in form, proves to be pretty clear that the Babylonians had once seen nothing derogatory to the divine nature in such a mode of representation. The winged bulls, who guarded the approach to the temple and protected it from the invasion of evil spirits, or the eagle-headed cherubs, who knelt on either side of the sacred tree were survivals of a time when the great gods of heaven and earth were themselves imaged and adorned in similar forms. The same evidence is borne by the animals, on whose backs the anthropomorphic deities are depicted as standing in later art. When the gods had become human, there was no place left for the animals with whom they had once been so intimately connected. The evidence, however, is not borne by art alone. The written text avert that the gods were symbolized by animals, like the sun god of Kiss, whose image or symbol was an eagle. This would be Zu, the birdman. It is these symbols which appear on the Babylonian boundary stones, where, in the infancy of Assyrian research, they were supposed to represent the zodiac signs. That they were originally something more than mere symbols is expressly indicated in the myths about the goddess of love. Gilgamesh taunts her with her treatment, not only of Allah the eagle, but also of the horse and lion, whose names are not given to us. At any rate, has preserved a recollection of the time when the gods of Babylonia were still regarded as eagles, horses, and lions. We are taken back to an epoch of Totemism, when the tribes and cities of Chaldea had each its own totem, or sacred animal, to whom it offered divine worship, and who eventually became its creator god. Not less clear is the legend of the first introduction of the culture into the valley of the Euphrates. Owans, or Enki, as it was remembered, had the body of a fish, and like a fish, when the days were closed, he sank each night into the waters of the Persian Gulf. When the day was closed, which he had spent among his favored disciples of Eridu, the culture god himself had once been a totem. At all events, from southern Babylonia, where the contact with the Semitic thought was less strong and abiding than was the case further north. Please hit that notification bell to ensure you are notified of each upload. Share, like, comment and subscribe to support the channel for more ancient mystery.